Hey everyone, it's Grow with Joe here, and here to give you another great lesson about investing and financial planning. And today, what we're going to talk about is fees. One of the key things that you want to manage within your investment portfolio and within your financial plan are the fees that are associated with your investments, because that could really take away from your retirement goals. It just causes it to require what some fees are fine. You just have to know the deal before you accept the deal. And so I'm just going to go over some things to help you understand what you should look for either on your own or when you talk to another professional. So the first fee that we're going to go over are expense ratios. So if you go to Yahoo Finance or look on Prospectus, it should tell you, hey, what are the expenses for this investment? And so typically, active managed funds have a higher expense ratio because someone's actively managing that portfolio than passive investments. Typically, their Vanguard is known as the #1 for passive investments and low cost investments. You can get an expense ratio of 0.03 for an index fund that Vanguard operates. Fidelity has some other ones. But when I tell you these things, please do your research. This is not a recommendation or endorsement of any of these companies. I don't work with any of these companies. I'm just trying to give you some ideas on what is out there. And so you want to look at the expense ratios. And so the idea is like, hey, if you have two investments that are very similar, say they're large cap U.S. Large cap companies, which are companies worth over $8 billion, and they're two investments in the same, but one's active and one's passive, and they're both getting an 8% return, but the expense ratio is higher than the passive, and then that's just going to eat up into the return of that investment. So you really have to understand what you're investing in and how it works out. And there's some differences between passive and active. You can't really just look at the upside of a fund. You also have to look at the downside. And so one of the arguments for active investments is it has downside protection. So when the market goes down, overall, an active fund is not going to go down as much as a passive fund because the passive fund is just following the market. And investment managers could do stuff to help mitigate that. But that's why you have to look at the information and understand. But if you don't want to look into that, probably paying the least amount of fees is the best route to go. There's a lot of studies that show that passive investing does better most of the time than active managed investments. And you just have to look at it. And that's not the case all across the board. There are some outliers. But you want to look at them, see if the fees that you're paying on your investment is worth what you're getting. So you want to look at the expense ratio. Another thing, a fee that can really eat up into your return are sales charges. So if you buy, these are typically associated with active managed funds as well. There are the sales charges, front load sales charges, and then there's back end sales charges. So front load sales charges, like, hey, we're going to take the fee right off the bat, and they could be typically around 5.75%. And there's breakpoints, which means that, hey, the more money you have with this one company, they're going to give you a lower sales charge. So if your sales charge is 5.75%, then it's kind of, and you put $100 in there, you're not investing $100, you're investing $94.25. And so then you just have to overcome that sales charge. But the idea is you're buying it through a broker dealer who's selling you this financial security, typically a mutual fund, and you're getting his advice. And so if you're getting his advice, that sales charge is supposed to compensate for that. If they're not giving you great advice, then maybe you got to ask yourself, hey, is this sales charge worth it? If you're not paying any other fees associated with financial advice, say you're not paying a financial planning fee, that's something you got to consider. Like, because working with a typical financial advisor is $150 to $300 and up from that per hour. you got to understand what you're paying for and everything. So if you're just getting financial advice and they're paying that, and you're putting $100, you're literally paying this guy $5.75 to give you financial advice for picking this fund, and just stick with it and everything. And then you have back end sales charges, which basically the longer you keep it in there, the lower the rate is going to be. But typically when that happens, they make it up by having a higher expense ratio. So those are things you want to look out for with the sales charge. And then another thing that are where a lot of the sales charges are going away, and people are being moved into managed accounts. So a managed account, you're just paying a fee, and that a flat fee is typically 0.2% up to 2% of whatever the amount is. So if you have $100,000 in there, you're paying, and it's at 2%, you're paying $2,000 a year in fees for that investment management. And that investment manager is going to choose all the funds for you based on your goals and everything. You could do a robo-advisor. Those could be as low as 0.2%, or typically they're around 0.25% to help manage those funds for you. But when you go with a robo-advisor, what is happening is you're just getting investment advice. You can't ask them questions. You can't really ask about the performance. They're just like, hey, here it is. Just put it in here, and this is what it's supposed to do for you and everything. If you go with somebody that you're facing face to face, then you can ask questions. But some folks just strictly advise on what you have with them. So if you have something outside of that, they might charge a fee for that, which it depends. You just have to look at it and just see what is going on with that. So those are the fees associated with it, and just understand, like, hey, if I'm paying $1,500 a year and I'm just getting investment advice, and it's compared to something a robo-advisor could do, be like, oh, is this fee worth it? And if you enjoy talking to that person face to face, then hey, yeah, because they're going to talk to you, they answer your phone calls, they answer your emails and everything, and then that management fee could be worth it. When we're looking at investments, typically you have some people sell investments as annuities. These are insurance products. So you don't need, typically a financial advisor that sells you security has a Series 6 or Series 7, and you can find that information if they're registered on the FINRA broker checker website, and I'll have a link in the comment section for that. So, but those are annuities. They have high surrender charges. So you kind of have to typically you have to keep your money in there for 10 years. And if you pull your money out before that, then you're going to face a surrender charge. It might be 10%. It depends on the annuity, but annuity could be a great, a suitable option, or best fit option for someone who's looking for a guaranteed income. That's basically what an annuity is for, is guaranteed income. Then you have the mutual funds with their front load charges or back end charges, sales charges. Those fees are going to be typically higher. Then you have ETFs. Those are going to have low expense ratios typically, but you just have to look at it and compare it to other stuff. Oh, and so if you're buying investments and everything, one of the key things is you want to avoid churning. And churning is like, hey, I'm going to pay this fee over here, and I pay it, and then I'm going to be switched to a different investment that is very similar to this old one, but I'm still going to pay a new fee. And that's illegal. You're not supposed to do that. So those are things you want to look out for. Just make sure when you're switching investments, you're not tacking on another fee. It's all part of the management fee or the RAP fee. So yeah, don't, if you're switching from investment and paying another fee on top of that, that's illegal, and you can report that to the FINRA, and they'll look into that. And then that could affect the person that and then you report that person that sold you that security or is doing churning. And then another thing about fees that's not associated with the financial advisor or brokerage firm or wirehouse. A lot of terms can mean the same thing in financial industry. Is you want to be tax efficient. You want to make sure that you're being tax efficient with your moves when it comes to buying stocks or mutual funds or anything that's in a taxable account. If you buy something and sell it within a year, you pay ordinary income. And if you make more than, as a single person, $38,000, as typically single make more than $50,000, then you fall into the 22% tax bracket. And depending on your state, you're going to pay state taxes as well. I used to live in Oregon, but I'm an Oregon resident, so my tax rate is 9.9%. If you live in Texas, that is 0. So you want to look at taxes and make sure you're being tax efficient. But if you keep it within a taxable account for more than 1 year and 1 day, then you pay a lower tax rate. So that could be from 0% to 20%. So those are fees that you want to mitigate so that you're not paying more taxes. Don't pay Uncle Sam a tip. You worked hard for this money. You have to be patient with this money, and you want to make sure that you accumulate enough for your retirement. And being tax efficient is a really good way of doing that. And that can come from tax planning and everything, and just making sure that your investment account that's in a taxable account, something is participating in tax loss harvesting, so offsetting losses with the gains. So it lowers your taxable consequence at the end of the year. And those are things to measure out and things to ask with your investments. Hey, am I being tax efficient? So I don't have to pay a lot of taxes at the end of the year that I don't have to. Sometimes you have to. And sometimes you just have to look at the situation, what you're investing in, and what makes the most sense, because things can happen where you have a family emergency, you have to pull money out, or a medical emergency. You're like, hey, I know I'm going to have to pay the taxes on this. It is what it is. And this is important. You want to lower your fees because, and it doesn't have to make sense. Say you're 30 years old and you're going to retire at 60 years old. If you can get a 0.3% better return, and that can come from performance and a lower fees, and then over that 30-year period, that can give you an extra $400 a month in retirement due to the power of your money growing and compound interest and everything. And $400 can be a lot of money, and that could come from your fees. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're managing your fees and look at performance. You just got to make sure you know the deal before you accept the deal and everything, and just realize what is possible, or what we all know, like it's possible for these to get a high return, but you got to look at the probability. Yes, it's possible, but it's not very probable. And you just got to understand, like, hey, these are my decisions, and here's the facts that I know, and this is what I'm going to go with, and I'm accepting it with that. And that's just what you got to do. But you realize, like, hey, getting a 0.3% better return on your investments over a 30-year period, investing the right amount of then that can give you an extra $400 at the end. And so this takes time. And financial planning, you want to start as early as possible. It's like planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And that's why I got into this industry, is because I want to help young individuals help take control of their money, because by the time you're 50 years old and you start, you got to save more money than you make. And most people won't be able to do that. So make sure you're being wise with your financial moves. And if you have any questions, you can schedule a complimentary discovery call with me. There will be a link in the comment section where you could be like, or you could just go to growwithjoe.me/schedule, and you can schedule right there. So I hope you learned a lot today about fees and how they can affect the performance of your investment portfolio, which then can affect your retirement. So if you want to have more control of your situation, understand what you're doing with your investment strategy, and you should be better off. If you need more help, then reach out to a professional like myself. So hope you enjoyed today's lesson. And remember, if you go with Joe, you can grow with Joe, because Joe knows dough. All right, see you later.